This week I had a minor disagreement with a motorist. I was cycling down to the hospital. I was going down the main road, but I was tucked in to the left. I wasn't one of those middle-aged men in lycra right in the middle of the road. I was, tucked in. We get to the traffic lights just sort of over there by the park, and the gentleman politely inquired as to why I wasn't on the cycle path. I say politely inquired. His voice was slightly raised, and there were a couple of Anglo-Saxon adjectives in there. And so we had a good-humoured conversation about why I was on the road and not on the cycle path. And you may think, yeah, he's got a point. Why were you on the road and not on the cycle path? Well, here's my reasoning. It's just me. Here's my reasoning. I actually don't like using the cycle paths in Bedford or Kempston. The reason I don't like using them is because they're actually not very nice to ride on. The surface isn't particularly well maintained. The tree roots make the whole thing very bumpy. There's wet leaves at the moment all over them. And of course, the biggest problem with the cycle paths, you know what it is? People, pedestrians walking through them, children walking through them, those blessed individuals on electric scooters whizzing through them. So it might just be me, but I actually feel safer on the road. I know it might sound weird. I actually feel safer cycling along the road. I've got two paths I can choose from, and I choose this path because this is the one that feels right to me. You're free to disagree. You can come and talk to me about it afterwards if you'd like to, but there it is. It's my choice, right? All of us face choices about which path we're going to take. In some ways, it's the biggest question, isn't it? It's the biggest choice that many of us face in our lives is what path, of all the paths we could take, which paths are we going to pursue? And which paths are we not going to pursue? That, in essence, is the subject of this evening's talk as we look at this little line, or two lines in Psalm 23 and verse 3. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. As Graham said, if you're joining us, if you're visiting with us this week, we're taking a slow, deliberate walk through Psalm 23, the most famous passage in all of the Bible, and just doing it kind of like line by line to really try and slow ourselves down and take in everything that is here for us. One of the things that we've been recommending, I'll mention it again for you, is this excellent little book by a guy called David Gibson. It's entitled The Lord of Psalm 23. It's a really excellent book if you like reading alongside, maybe something for your mornings. You can read a few pages. It really is very, very good indeed. So let me just once again highlight that to you. So as it says, he guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Just two questions this evening. Two questions, and they are, whose path will we walk? And whose name will we trust? Okay, so that's our first question this evening is, whose path will you walk? Whose path will you walk? There's a whole plethora of kind of paths before you in life. Well, whose path will you choose? We are told fairly constantly, aren't we, that the real way to freedom is to walk your own path. One American writer and author once wrote this, don't follow where the path may lead, go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. Sometimes we're told, aren't we, don't follow everyone else's path, blaze your own trail, march to the beat of your own drum. And so we can sold this idea that actually that the way to freedom, the way to happiness, the way to fulfillment is don't listen to other people, don't let them shape your path. No, you've got to follow your own. You've got to make your own path through life, and that's where you'll really find yourself. But of course, the psalm doesn't say that, does it? David says something which would be really quite controversial for our culture. David says, if you want to find freedom, if you want to find happiness, if you want to find a refreshed soul, follow someone else's path. Specifically, follow the path which the shepherd, the good shepherd, the Lord, leads us on. He guides me along the right paths, or in some translation, the paths of righteousness. In the time this was written, the word paths has this sense of sort of cart tracks. The idea that as a cart would travel along land, it would, in softer ground, it would sort of leave indentations. And then as that ground kind of dried and hardened, you would have these paths or these tracks, and you follow along in them. What happens when you do? Well, Graham helped us see it last week, didn't he, when we were looking at the end of verse 2 into the first part of verse 3. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths. Do you see the connection? As we walk in his paths, what will you find? You'll find a refreshed soul. The grass or the pasture isn't greener somewhere else, is it? If you want to find the green pasture, the soul-refreshing, life-giving water, you walk in his paths. Again, Graham showed us last week a little connection link into Psalm 19, verse 7. Psalm 19, verse 7 says this: "The law of the Lord is perfect, refreshing the soul." So join those bits together. If you want a refreshed soul, will you walk in the Lord's paths? What does that look like? Well, it means obeying the law of the Lord. As we walk in his ways, as we listen to his word, as we follow his commands, that is actually the place where you're going to find your soul refreshed. It's a bit like walking in his paths, isn't it? Here's the experience. I'm sure you've had this thing where you've put the wrong key in the lock. And you'll find that the key, it will go with a bit of effort, but it won't turn, will it? That's what it's like when we're on the wrong path. Or it's a bit like one of those, have you seen those Chinese finger traps made of woven paper, and you put your finger in it, and the more you pull against it, the kind of the tighter it forms on your finger, and the only way really to get out is to relax. Just as we find ourselves not striving against his ways, but walking in them and giving ourselves to them, that's where we find our true freedom. A fish may say, actually, I don't want to be in water anymore. I want to be free. But actually, all that will lead to is death, won't it, for the fish? We are made as his image bearers to walk in his ways, and that's actually where you will find your greatest level of kind of fulfillment, of satisfaction, and of happiness. What does that mean for us? Well, maybe this evening you're somebody who has, as you read these words, you sort of sense that maybe you are on the wrong path. And maybe you think, I have tried to follow my own path. I've tried to follow another path, and it's not really working. And I don't actually feel that happy. I don't feel enormously content in it. Well, I'd love you to read these words as an invitation to come and join his path. His path isn't only for sort of certain people who try hard enough and be good enough. He invites each and any and every one of us to be his followers. So you can come and you can join the rest of the sheep kind of on the path, walking in his tracks. Read this as an invitation to you to leave the wrong path that you kind of sense you're on and join his path. Maybe for some of you, you read these words and you feel like if you're on the right path, it feels pretty costly. You feel like you are making some sacrifices personally, and you're making some choices to obey the law of the Lord and to follow in his footsteps. But you think, it feels hard. It feels difficult. And maybe you're tempted to think, well, is there an easier path? Maybe the path just over there, maybe that would be easy. Maybe that would be better. Maybe that would make me feel happier. But look at the psalm. Look at the psalm in its entirety. This is the only path by the time you get to the end that will take you to dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So yeah, the path isn't always easy, is it? Notice, you don't only get in this psalm verse 2, you also get verse 4. He refreshes my soul. He guides me on right paths. Even though I walk the darkest valley. See, all those things are happening together? That walking his path, actually somehow, weirdly, in the paradox of being a Christian, you can both find yourself in the darkest valley and feel your soul being somehow refreshed in that. As you walk the path that is only his path, that will enable us to do that. It's not easy. It requires trust. But true freedom, true purpose, true happiness, true soul refreshment, and dwelling in the house of the Lord forever only comes as we walk this path, someone else's path, the Lord's path. Second question, whose name will you trust? Whose path are you going to walk through your life? And whose name will you trust? You'll notice that the second line of that says, he guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. We'll come back to that in just a moment. Whose name will you trust? Well, again, what does the world tell you? Trust yourself. Believe in yourself. The reason that you can blaze your own trail, the world says, is because you can believe in yourself. There's no sense, is there, in our culture or our world in which actually maybe you should be suspicious of yourself. Maybe you're not the best guide. Maybe you don't know the best way, but culture never says that. It says, no, you know. Believe in yourself, so choose your own path. The Bible would encourage us to be much more suspicious about our own ability to know and to choose the right way to go. We are sheep. He is the shepherd, and he guides us along the right paths for his name's sake. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean, that he guides us along the right paths for his name's sake? I just want to show you just two Bible verses to try and explain it. The first one is from 1 Samuel 12, and it says this, for the sake of his great name, the Lord will not reject his people, because the Lord was pleased to make you his own. Or Psalm 106, verse 8, yeah, he saved them for his name's sake, to make his mighty power known. This phrase, for his name's sake, appears actually, I could have shown you a dozen verses throughout the Bible. They have this idea that when God acts, particularly when God acts for and through his people, he does it for his name's sake. He does it for the fame of his name. As weird as it seems to us, when he saves people and when he draws them and rescues them, it's so that he may display his glory to the nations. His name may be made known to all the earth through the way he treats his sheep, through the way in which he rescues us, guides us, leads us. The way he does that is meant to speak to the world around of his power, of his mercy, of his goodness. If I can put it like this, and this is a truly mind-blowing idea, God has bound his honor to your welfare as a sheep. God has bound his name, his reputation to the well-being of the sheep. There's great comfort and assurance in that, isn't there? There's a Swiss watchmaker called Patek Philippe. And Patek Philippe it's a family-run business. They make these exquisite handcrafted Swiss watches. Each and every part of it is made by hand. They're assembled by hand using the finest materials and the finest craftsmen. Their whole kind of marketing shtick is you never really own a Patek Philippe. You just hold on to it for the next generation. Such is their commitment to the quality of what they're doing. They believe these will last well over 100 years as you pass them on. They put their name on the dial to say, if you want to know about us, look at what we make. Now, one of these will cost you quite a lot of money. You can Google it afterwards. You could go onto AliExpress or Temu, and you could find something that looked a bit like that. But what you would discover fairly quickly is there's no name on the dial. Nobody's staking their reputation on it because it probably won't last more than about 6 months. The name is on the dial because they're staking their reputation as people on the goods they produce. There's something of that going on here. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. The Lord has bound his honor and his reputation to you, to your well-being, to getting you home in the journey. Your confidence this evening as a Christian is not in your character, but it's in his. Your confidence is not in your power, it's in his. Your confidence is not in your performance, it's in his. Your confidence is not in your promise, it's in his promise. Your confidence is not in your capacity, it's in his capacity. For some of you, you may be feeling particularly weary on the path. You may be saying, look, it's not that I want to go on the wrong path. I'm following in the Good Shepherd's path, but I just feel so weary. I just feel so tired. I don't know how I can keep going. Well, he guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Some of you may be feeling so weary, in fact, that there are moments where you think, I sort of long for the journey to be over. I'm not even sure I want to be on the path anymore. Can it end? And it still seems to stretch out in front of you, and you think, how do I get to the end? Well, he's promised to guide you for his name's sake. For some of us, there's even that thing, isn't there, where we see loved ones, and maybe we see them struggling and suffering, maybe with a terminal illness, maybe with dementia, maybe with Alzheimer's, and we think, have they left the path? Will they leave the path? How are they held on? What holds them? He guides me along the right paths. For his name's sake, he has bound his honor to the welfare of his sheep. As we've sung, he will keep you from all evil, behind you and before. He will sustain you through this journey now and evermore. It also reminds us, of course, doesn't it, that his name or his glory is more important than my temporal comfort. What he is doing, his purpose is to glorify his name. It may seem confusing and bewildering. I may not understand quite why the path is going, but sheep don't set the route, the shepherd does. And it may feel very difficult and very confusing, but when he acts for his name's sake, it tells us there is a purpose, even in the detours and the winding routes and the hurdles and the bogs, and there is purpose. There is his name's sake for which he is working, even when we find it very difficult to see how that's working out. The supreme example of this is the cross, isn't it? The cross looks like the biggest defeat for God in all of human history. And yet it's the place where he's seen to be most glorious, isn't it? That's what John's gospel keeps kind of reaffirming, that when is God the Son most glorified? It's when he's lifted up on the cross. The cross is somehow both the most horrific and evil thing ever in human history and the most glorious thing in human history. As we come to the supper in just a moment, it is both a remembrance of the Good Shepherd's love for us and a foretaste of the banquets to come. So whose path are you going to walk through your life? And whose name are you going to trust in life? In the words of the hymn that we occasionally sing here, all to Jesus I surrender. All to him I freely give. I will ever love and trust him. In his presence daily live. Why? He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake.